Welcome
Yes.
everyone to the webinar about building a results-driven roadmap for 2024. Last year we had Paul in Amsterdam during the D2C summit, and we actually did a similar kind of session in a small workshop room, and we were quite excited about the feedback, and we thought, why won't we organize a webinar and share our insights and knowledge with everyone who wants to attend today? So it's great that all of you have joined. So we'll start with a quick intro. Paul will introduce himself and his agency based in London. I will give a brief introduction about our agency, and then we'll look at some high-level trends we've seen with our clients for 2024, and things we've seen in the industry where brands are investing their resources. After that, we'll review some practical UX examples and some ideas which might help you to define your roadmap for 24. And after that, we'll look at some of the best-in-class brands in our opinion. So these are brands we usually show to new clients to inspire them and steal good ideas off. And at the end, we'll have time for discussion or answering some of the questions. So feel free to put in questions during the webinar, and we'll answer them at the end. So without further ado, Paul, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Martijn. Yeah, thanks for setting this up as well. I really enjoyed the discussion in Amsterdam, so it's good to kind of come back with a slightly updated version. So yeah, just to briefly introduce myself and Vervaunt. So I've been working in e-com for about 15 years. I would say I'm kind of half technical, half strategic. And I spend a lot of time kind of working with clients and running workshops and still being relatively hands-on. But I also am the managing director of Vervaunt, which I co-founded in 2017. And Vervaunt we have two kind of clear offerings. So one is e-commerce consultancy that I run. The other side is performance marketing, which my business partner runs. We're a team of 50 based in London. So all of our team are in the UK. And we work mostly with kind of multi-channel, omni-channel fashion brands. Yeah, and then the performance side is a bit bigger than the e-com side. And then I think I briefly saw some of our clients. Yeah, so we work, like I say, mostly fashion with some exceptions across mostly the UK, Europe, and North America.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Paul. Some quite impressive brands. Exciting to hear your insights today. So, yeah, I'm Martijn, for the ones who don't know me yet. I'm from Ask Phill, one of the co-founders of Ask Phill, and up till the 1st of January, I was a commercial director. I have a successor, and I will be focusing more on on strategic topics for the agency to further grow. We started our agency back in 2016. We're an e-commerce agency focused on strategy, design, development, and optimization of Shopify stores. We work with a range of brands from fashion, lifestyle, and beauty, and our main focus, or most of the brands, are based in Europe. We're with a team of around 55 people, with our HQ in Amsterdam. And yeah, like I said, the type of brands we work with, it's dispersed over Europe, and they're all on Shopify. So let's get started with the webinar and some of the insights of 2024. But maybe before we start, Paul, how do you feel about 2024 in general, and what are your expectations for the year?
Yeah, so I think fairly optimistic. I think going into Q4 last year, I wasn't as optimistic. And then I think a lot of our clients maybe achieved a higher level of performance than they maybe expected. And then I think also last year, a lot of kind of big change projects and kind of any form of CapEx project was on hold, whereas it feels like that's kind of shifted a bit. So yeah, fairly optimistic, I'd say.
Yeah, I hear the same from clients, but I also see the same that, or I feel optimistic about 2024. 2023 was a bit of a messy and transition year.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it will be an exciting year. So if we look at some of the topics you've heard from your clients or seen in the market, and you recently came back from New York from the big fair, the
Yeah.
NRF. How was the fair?
Yeah, it was interesting. The actual fair itself was very intense. So I only spent about an hour in the actual exhibition. It was just crazy. Like all of the European ones I've been to are like 10% of the size, and there must have been like 10,000 salespeople in that room. So it was quite intense. But yeah, I really enjoyed it overall. And again, I think there was a lot of like optimism around kind of the technology landscape and kind of the US as a market. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Nice. So we listed some of the trends we see. Maybe you can elaborate on this one, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you guys will see this probably even more than us as a Shopify agency, but I think maybe 80% of the kind of brand market is kind of working towards simplifying their kind of tech stack, like using a series of kind of best-in-class SaaS vendors rather than maybe investing in customization and more complicated technologies, I guess. So Shopify is a big driver of that. And it definitely feels like a lot of the larger brands we've worked with over the last few years are now either moving to a Shopify or planning their move to Shopify, and then alongside that, simplifying the rest of the stack as well. And you know, a portion of that is then also kind of more low code orientated. And then that way they're able to focus more of their attention on kind of trading the sites, building a brand experience, which we'll come on to. The only thing I would say alongside that is the other 20%, I feel, or maybe more like 10%, are investing in kind of technology as their IP or differentiator, and that side of the market is maybe going more down the composable route or kind of investing in more custom solutions. But I would say our average client is in the first bracket.
Yeah, simplification of the tech stack indeed is a trend we see with no code and low code movements, but also in the case of Shopify, for example, offering a good search and filter options, where last years we saw brands going to, for example, Algolia for search, or maybe a separate filtering tool. So we see that most brands are revisiting their tech stack and seeing where they can cut out unnecessary tools. So something I would definitely advise to anyone: always keep an eye on your tech stack and ask, like, why is this tool here, and can we make it simpler or more cost efficient?
Absolutely. One thing I'd add to that as well is I think there's a lot of consolidation in the market. So a lot of our clients historically would have used a separate tool for product recommendations, visual merchandising, or like category merchandising and search. And now there are tools that could be considered best in class and have a very good integration that can cover all three. And then there's also players like Voyado coming into the market that are loyalty, kind of search and merch and email. And I think there's a lot more good consolidation now, whereas historically there was consolidation, but it wasn't necessarily best in class across the board. So I think we'll see more of that.
Yeah, and if we look at headless versus native setup, or like you're saying, like composable versus in the box, we've seen some composable clients moving back to Shopify just because Shopify upgraded their offering and multi-language and multi-currency options, for example. But we also see some brands move the other way around because they're so sure about the compostable setup and they have specific needs. What type of brands do you see to move to compostable?
Yeah, so I think the people that move to composable, sometimes there'll be one stakeholder that has that is very opinionated, and I think they will go down that route for the wrong reasons. But when it's for the right reasons, I think it's usually where it's either like the brand really needs an experience that just doesn't follow the common trends in ecom, or like isn't the standard kind of front end experience. Like that would be one route. The other one is complexity on the front end. If there's specific functionality that you need to kind of build out, and you can get more freedom through going down the headless route. Yeah, and the other one might be team as well, dependent on the business. And again, this comes back down to the need and the functionality. But a lot of the, like, you look at like a Gymshark or I don't know, some of the other big Shopify brands that have gone down the headless route, like they have like large engineering teams, and actually when they start to work in a certain way, it doesn't really make too much difference. And then they've just got a bit more freedom to kind of, like choose their own kind of processes and ways of working, etc.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's move on to the next trend we're seeing.
Yeah, so I think this is a big one at the moment. So many of our kind of clients that we work with on strategic kind of programs or initiatives historically have been focused on scaling performance and increasing conversion metrics, whereas now it feels like a lot of brands are coming back to things like kind of art direction, creative direction, storytelling, like building more of a unique experience online. And I feel like this goes in waves. Like the last few years have been very trade orientated, but now, because it's a competitive market, the digital channels are bigger than physical retail for so many brands. It feels like people are now starting to assign budget to building that kind of brand experience. And I also think more and more brands are starting to kind of prove the value around kind of net new customer acquisition, and getting people bought into a brand via content, via certain types of photography, and the kind of whole experience being very consistent and on brand generally. But we'll come on to some examples of this later on. But have you seen the same trend?
And yeah, I do see brands really investing in, the way how we see it is that they invest in pages, designing and building pages, which not directly affect the sales, but more indeed about pages or more in-depth blog overviews and blog pages. So we see the same going there because that's the way how they can differentiate. Yeah, and about first-party data capture and accounts. Yeah, we talked about the examples. Maybe you can elaborate on this as well, the importance of it.
So this is quite a broad one, and I think it's a big shift in the industry for a number of reasons. And this touches quite a few different areas, including one of the ones that you're going to talk about in a bit. But if you look at like, so Salomon's an example we use a lot, Adidas, Nike, like various others, a lot of brands are moving to try and get customers to build accounts and spend more time logged in. And I think one of the initial drivers towards this was tracking. So, as we can't rely on cookies as much, and well, basically, that you're able to get more kind of data around the customer and what they're doing when a user is logged in. And alongside that, in order to do things like loyalty, which is a massive trend at the moment, in the majority of cases, you need an account. And it's also a good way to kind of collect more data, and the kind of journeys around building an account are more geared towards collecting more data. And we'll go through some examples later on. But basically, when you combine all those things together, and like I'd say at least 50% of our clients are doing this at the moment, where they're basically building a whole proposition around the account. So building incentives like free shipping, free returns, various other kind of service orientated benefits, or they're building a base level of loyalty into their existing loyalty programs, and then through the account process, because there's an incentive, they're able to then ask for like richer data from the customer. And also kind of part of the proposition in a lot of cases is more of a personalized experience. So they're asking for sizes, interests in, you know, certain categories, that kind of stuff. And you end up with a much richer customer profile and a much better experience for the customer, and better data as well. So I think this we could talk about for the whole episode, but yeah, I would say it's a big trend in general.
What do you see as the biggest challenge for brands who want to start cultivating making accounts?
I think it's a big project. To be honest, like the first step that most of our clients are doing is building the initial proposition around the account. So, you know, essentially like the account login page, prompts through the site, you know, if you want free, like, so Salomon's a good example in checkout, where they basically have guest checkout, login, free shipping, sign up for an account, free shipping, like stuff like that is one of the easier routes. But I think some of the broader stuff, like when you're, you know, you need a strategy around how you're going to track logged in users, and, you know, it takes a lot of thinking around obtaining the right data and then kind of surfacing that on the front end through core journeys. But I think actually starting to have a strategy just purely to build accounts initially, and then figuring out how you're going to measure, how you're going to better use the data, that's kind of probably needs more time and investment.
Nice. Yeah, definitely also the account building ties into the segmentation we'll touch upon in a bit. Yeah, the order management and inventory optimization.
Yeah, so this one I think so there's various like layers to it, but I think going back to like our average client, not too dissimilar to yours, is probably a 25 million fashion brand with multiple channels, and maybe a UK DC, an EU DC, and a US DC. So in total, they might have like, I don't know, 10 kind of pools of inventory. And particularly when you move up to like higher price points, a lot of our brands will get into a position where maybe in the EU and the US, they don't have the inventory to serve orders, and where they've got kind of isolated inventory in the UK. And now it feels like a lot of people are starting to think about order routing and, you know, kind of combining inventory at a global level, and then figuring out the order management side. And alongside this, also doing things like pre-order better, ship from store, and basically generally just trying to utilize inventory more effectively. So yeah, I would say it's the big topic at the moment, and one that, so we were obviously in LA at the Shopify event, and then I was also at an event in New York with Shopify. And I think over the next 12 months, this will be an area where they kind of double down, and some of the other platforms are doing similar things. But I think at the moment, in order to be quite sophisticated in this area, you would need an OMS or to build custom functionality within an ERP, whereas I think this will soon be something that the platforms latch onto, and some of the other technologies around the platform.
Yeah, it's great to see that Shopify starts investing in this order routing, and
yeah,
it's already good for everyone here to start thinking about how you can take advantage of these new features once they are launched.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other one that Shopify are doing is like more flexible split shipments. So be that via retail and online, or basically doing split shipments from different inventory locations. So that, alongside the order routing stuff, will make some of this a lot.
And what about the customer understanding?
Yes, I think some of this ties into that third point, and it's like through the journey, kind of thinking about what you're presenting to a customer to understand more about them. So things like presenting different options at the top of the PLP and then tracking that data via your CRM and kind of adding events and then building that into the customer property. Things like post-purchase surveys, which we'll come on to enrich the data. But alongside that, I think a lot of our clients over the last 6 months or so have, and this isn't something we do, but it's something that I think is popular, and I do think there's a lot of room for someone to make this a bit more mainstream, but they basically want to take their customer database and better understand them. So some of that will be using existing data points and new data points through some of the stuff I talked about, and then kind of building different profiles and building insights around, you know, which cities are growing, like, you know, which types of customers are moving up from a loyalty perspective or a lifetime value perspective, like, you know, the value of certain products for first purchase, all of that kind of stuff. And then some of it is more like socio-demographic data being overlaid on that database to better understand kind of who the customer is and like, yeah, that kind of stuff. So more like Hitwise level stuff.
Yeah, nice. Good insight. Yeah, and the investments in reporting stacks, that's an ongoing topic we're seeing.
Yeah, I think over the last few years, this has been a big one anyway. So more people building out like their own either kind of BI stacks or investing in more sophisticated reporting tools. But I think GA4 has pushed a lot of people into, or a lot of ecom teams doing this. So a lot of people will be using like a Power BI or equivalent within finance teams. But and then I think like as Google made Looker more mainstream, people got more comfortable with pulling data out of certain channels and building dashboards. But now it feels like people are investing and building like purpose-built solutions instead of using things like GA in particular. So rather than going into UA and looking at things on the fly, they're basically gradually building out better reporting in, you know, Tableau, Power BI, whatever else, and then just pulling in data from different channels and GA rather than kind of, you know, doubling down on understanding the UI and how some of the measurement side of it works.
Thanks. And if we talk about the traceability proposition and the content around it, that's also a thing you've seen in the market.
Yeah, so I think this is just a big trend. Like, so I think with all of the kind of foundational stuff around the DPP regulation that's coming in, I think that's pushed a few people, and then it's been a trend more from a marketing and positioning perspective anyway. So I think Everlane and Asket were very early to kind of surfacing information around how the product was manufactured, like costs, materials, that kind of stuff. And then Nudie have been a really good example for a long time around kind of having really engaging content around the carbon footprint of products. But I think now a lot more brands are doing it. One, because they're going to have to do it anyway. So they have to do the kind of initial research into the supply chain. But two, because I do think the average consumer is more aware now from a sustainability perspective, and they want to understand, you know, the life cycle of a product. So Asket's a really good example for the kind of digital impact receipt. So they were one of the first to roll that out, where they essentially have a transactional email and an email that talks about the kind of overall impact of the product and also the fulfillment piece and everything else.
That's interesting.
But
I never saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool, yeah. So you get 2 emails basically, and it looks like a transactional email. But I think more people are trying to source this information and present it on the PDP as like a subtle, area where you can get this information. I don't know, have you seen the same trend?
Yeah, I've seen it with No Label. It's a Dutch brand, bit similar like Everlane. They also report on that quite extensively in their product pages. Tony's Chocolonely, they're famous for the traceability of their beans, and it's all in their story. So yeah, definitely seeing the same trend there. Yeah, and then segmentation strategies. we already touched upon, let's say, capturing more data, getting more first-party data, understand the customer better. But we see that also with this information, most of the brands are doubling down on their own marketing channels, like their email or SMS or their mobile app in some cases, and really taking the next step with segmenting their customer base and providing them customized offers during campaigns, for example, but making it way personalized than they used to do before. So taking the time with the team to sit down and come up with strategies how to further segment the user base. But that segmentation also ties into the personalization strategies. And like Shopify announced last year in LA, is like personalization is obviously already a thing in e-com for the last 5 years, but there hasn't been a proper solution to making personalized homepages, product pages, without having the downside of CLS, so cumulative layout shifts, or a glitch, or delays, or an impact on performance. So with Shopify announcing this in a native way, the idea will be that you can make multiple homepages, and then based on the segment where the user is in, they will show the right homepage without any latency. So for everyone listening and the ones who are on Shopify, I would definitely advise to start thinking about segmentation and personalization strategies, maybe for first-time buyers or loyal customers or VIP customers, and be ready for when it's actually released. So we expect either in Q2 or Q3 to be this to be announced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really exciting one. The other one that they used at the event that we were both at was gender, which is something that we've done, but it's a workaround and it's a bit scrappy. But being able to do that kind of stuff natively and being able to also surface the data and push it into other systems is will be really valuable.
Yeah, and then social commerce, I think also kind of a thing which has been somewhat around for the last couple of years, but we haven't seen the impact as we see in Asia, and then mainly in China and Korea, where they do a lot of live shopping, in some cases on TikTok or on their own platforms. That's a whole industry by itself. We see the first steps being taken in the US with TikTok business and the TikTok shops. And we also expect this year that Shopify and TikTok will launch in Europe with their either TikTok shops or live shopping. But I haven't heard a date yet when that will be released, but that could be an interesting one for brands which are heavily reliant on TikTok for their customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was listening to a podcast the other day because most of our clients are premium fashion, I didn't realize that TikTok shop is actually getting pretty big in other categories. So a lot of the Amazon brands are actually doing like significant revenue now via TikTok. And I guess that's something that I'd really thought about, but actually it is it's already a big channel. It's just that it's not in as many categories yet as.
It's I'm curious to see what will change with that, but it could be interesting for introductions of new collections or the special shopping campaigns. So we'll see. And then the last one, I think a webinar in 2024 or 2023 without AI is not a webinar. We won't go too much in depth on this, but we've seen that making a strategy and utilizing AI within the operations of brands, so on the back end, it's definitely something you're probably already are doing, but if not, start looking where you can optimize processes with AI. But also in Shopify, they have been upgrading their Shopify Magic. It's like a Chat GPT for Shopify. And that's also a tool we definitely would advise to start using once it's rolled out to your stores. Yeah, I think if we move on, so these are the trends we've seen and some of the things you should be focusing on, which will help you to be successful in the coming year, in our opinion. If there are things we missed, I am open to hear some advice in the Q&A. If there's topics we should be investing or investigating more in, please let us know. And then we'll move forward with some practical examples, so some visual examples of some of the some good brands around.
Yeah, so my ones are a little bit random, and I've also been a bit lazier than Martijn, and I haven't done the nice GIFs, so I need to kind of talk through them a little bit. So exit and temp pop-ups, I think is probably like maybe like 10 years ago, the likes of like Yieldify and some of the other solutions did this quite a lot, and it was a bit spammy, and a lot of brands moved away from it. But I have seen a couple of examples that I really like recently. So one is Nike, and this is essentially if you've got an item in your basket, you get this cart check pop-up if you try to leave, or on mobile if you're inactive for a period of time, and it just prompts you to basically check out, and the whole piece is around kind of scarcity with inventory. So I think that's really nicely done. And Rimowa have got something similar, but it's more abandoned browse rather than cart. But that's two kind of premium-ish brands doing it quite nicely.
It's nice that they don't spam you with 40% discount when you leave, but just exactly, as a reminder or service oriented.
Exactly. And we're about to roll this out with a few clients, so I'll report back on performance. And then the next one, so this is quite a bad example. And again, we're about to roll this out with 2 clients. And I think this will tie in quite nicely to what we were just talking about with personalization and segmentation. But essentially, the notification icon on the top right there with the little count is proven to get a lot of clicks. And it's a great way to essentially just showcase information. So one of the brands that we're going to do it with release quite a lot of new products regularly, and then they've also got like a base level membership program. So if a returning customer comes back, it can remind the customer of the benefits, and for new customers it would just start either showing new product. You might have a notification around new product, you might have a notification around like the account benefits, for example, but it's basically just a good way to communicate with new and returning customers, and yeah, kind of communicate any messages you want. But we've seen clients do similar things in the past and it'd be very high impact. So we're in the process of testing this with one client, and we're going to be rolling out a lot more.
Nice. And what type of brands would this be most interesting for, or what type?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think if you do it in the right way and you tone it correctly, I think it can work in premium. So one of the brands that we've done it with is actually a premium brand, but I would say who they are, but I don't like their implementation and I don't want to ruin this. Hopefully they're not on the webinar. But yeah, I mean, we plan to do it with some fairly premium fashion brands. The one that I talked about before is a watch brand with an AOV of like a few £100. And I do think if you do it correctly, it just needs to be on brand, but I think it's a good mechanism for communicating with customers, which is notoriously difficult.
Yeah, I like it. Next one.
Yes. Yeah, so this one, I mean, it's not actually the best example. So Sunspell are one of our clients and it's kind of okay, but essentially like I talked about the brand piece earlier, and a lot of people are trying to build more of a branded like landing experience for like net new customers. So people that have never been on the site before. So they might know the brand, but they're people that have never interacted with your social profiles or been on the site before. So this is, I guess, like more of an editorial landing page where you're introducing groups of products whilst also showing like lifestyle imagery and kind of giving a bit more of an intro to the brand. On running, I've got a really nice one, but it's actually really hard to find on their site. So maybe I can send that in a follow-up, but they've got like a really nice, like curated page where they really kind of introduce each category of product. But essentially it's kind of, you've got your homepage, which is at least in a lot of categories, not likely to be too kind of trade orientated and might not even really intro the brand that well. You've got PLPs, which are essentially just catalog. So it's kind of building something in the middle based on what you know about a customer to try and give them a better chance of kind of buying into the brand, and also better showcase like, a high number of product.
And do you see brands like Sunspell creating multiple of these net new landing pages based on segmentations in their performance marketing?
It's more, so to be honest, where they use it most is for like net new customer acquisition at gender level and maybe the highest product category level. Yeah, we've had other clients go a bit more granular, but with like the way that the world's gone with kind of broad targeting, it's quite hard to go granular. But I think, if you're a multi-category fashion brand, you create gender landing pages, I think it's a better way to like showcase the different product types and different collections, rather than just having like a really long PLP or a homepage, for example.
Yeah, this is an interesting one which I really like, and which almost none of at least our brands are utilizing.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So basically, we developed an app called Census, which we spend a disproportionate amount of time on. It's quite small. We've got about 210 customers using it now, but some pretty big brands. And essentially, it's a survey that sits on the order confirmation page, and you can ask different questions based on rules. And to start off with, we built it for attribution, so for the performance channels. So kind of basically asking different customers where they first heard or saw the brand. And you'll get a up to 25% completion rate. So it's a really good source of data. But then over time, we started using it more for feedback. So based on what a customer has bought or where they've shipped to, kind of asking for feedback and then collating that to then prioritize bugs, roadmap stuff. And then now we've integrated it with OpenAI, which makes it easier to like interpret, hundreds of thousands of rows of data. And then lastly, and the reason why I've used this as an example is because a lot of our customers are now using it to collect more data. So for example, a client last week started asking for age range. So they had like brackets of ages, and then they pushed that data into Klaviyo. And in this case, it's asking for gift versus self-purchase, which is super interesting. Like sometimes that's 30-40% when people don't even know that people are buying the product as gifts. And again, that could be pushed into your CRM. And then we've had loads of other questions, like trying to understand the role of wholesale and stuff like that. But it's just an untapped area to kind of better understand customers, basically, and collect more data.
Yeah, I interacted with it 2 months ago when I was buying some products online for the first time. And then since it's after purchase, it feels like I was happy with the experience. And I thought, let's answer some questions, see what happens.
Yeah.
So this also ties back into the CDP and into the account to enrich the accounts of the customers.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other bit that I forgot to mention was the NPS score. So post-purchase, not post-fulfillment, but most of our clients' customer service teams will basically go 5 and under and just look at the issues, or like push it into gorgeous and, kind of try to get an understanding of the kind of why they're getting bad feedback.
Yeah, nice. I like it.
And then this, sorry, go on.
Yeah, Salomon.
Yeah, so Solomon. So I talk about them a lot because I do think they're great. But so this is just, so I think everyone, I wouldn't say people are sick of it because I think you can do it in a really nice way, but obviously finders have kind of been done to death in at least Shopify world. So kind of quizzes, like isolated quiz experiences. But I do think they're a great way to like capture more data and like enrich customer properties within a CDP or a CRM. But I really like when brands do it kind of inline on the page. So this example is Solomon. So they will ask a series of questions. So in this case, it's choose your discipline, then it's like choose your, I don't know, whatever else. I can't remember what the other questions are. But you're basically filtering the product in real time, which is a good customer experience, but you also have the ability to track what they're clicking on to again kind of add that data to their customer properties. So yeah, it's an all-round kind of good strategic way of thinking, I think.
I, by the way, seen a question in the chat about if you can share the name of the app which you used in the checkout.
Oh, lovely. Best question ever.
Yeah,
Yes. I didn't know how to answer it.
yeah, you can
Okay.
add the answer. Nice.
That's lovely.
And then if we move on to the account experience, also touched upon in the intro.
So I don't think when I talk about this stuff, I forget how much I like cover it off or like cross over with other bits. But essentially, this ties really nicely into what you were saying and what I was saying around obtaining more data, but also personalizing. So this is a good example from Jay Lindbergh, where one, the account is just a really nice experience, but also through the process, they're asking about preferences. So for example, I've clicked golf and I've given them my sizes. And then that allows them to one, serve recommendations in the account, but then also use that information to highlight availability on PLP and PDP, and maybe like personalized product recommendations and, you know, how they're kind of progressing me through the site. So it kind of ties in really with what you were saying. But again, I think this is something that is good from a customer experience perspective and kind of data and personalization.
Yeah, nice. I like what they did. Let me go back. I like what they did here with on the right side, making it superficial, which preferences you have, as well as the handpicked for me, a great way to utilize the data and immediately show some good offers to the client.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example.
So one I added was like a native feel on product pages. So if we look at the mobile experience at Filling Pieces, if you would open one of their product pages, it really feels like you're in a native app. So you have a kind of a scroll up where you can get extra information, but the focus is really on the imagery and giving an immersive feel about the product, while they can still tell a lot about the product itself if you scroll up with your thumb. So I thought it was designed quite well.
I really like this as well. I think the Filling Pieces site is really strong. I was going through it the day after the D2C summit in that Chinese restaurant you took me to, and yeah, in particular the PDP is like right up there with like the On Runnings and some of the other sites that we consider best.
Yeah, nice. I think we're approaching the end of the webinar. We still have some nice examples of the best in class brands. So your favorite coming back again, Paul?
Yeah, so I forgot about this section actually. So I've kind of covered most of these, but yeah, Solomon do a really good job with the account section, some of their content. I really like the guided selling piece, but I think because they're a big company with a big enterprise tech stack, so I think it's quite impressive with some of the stuff that they manage to execute, and I think they do lead the way in some areas. So yeah, I think they're a really good example. On running, another one I've talked about a lot. So I think bits of this site could actually be stronger, but it's the thing that I like about it is one, their content's exceptional. And then two, like the way the theme is built is like very consistent. It feels very premium. Like all of the interactions, like all of the CTAs, everything is like on point. And I personally am like a real stickler for that, and I think you are as well. So yeah, I often use this as an example for like design processes.
I like also that the design itself is different than we're used to. If you look at the menu
Yeah.
bar, it's done in a smart and cool way, different way.
Yeah, I agree. And then Rev, I think, is just a really nice example of like a premium fashion brand that have kind of, yeah, really doubled down on art direction. Like functionally, it's pretty strong, but I just think it's a very clean premium example. And I think they do, from a design perspective, I think they just really kind of elevate the product and the brand really well.
What's the URL of this website, Rev?
Revofficial.com.
Okay, nice.
And then this I really like. So I think people can be not lazy with navigation, but I think navigation is a good way. Like you think about all like the experiential like stores and retail experiences out there. I don't think people are that creative with navigation. I think you've got people like Supreme and Palace that kind of do stuff that's kind of on brand, but Civilist is a really good example of where if you go to the latest, you've got a horizontal scroll, and then it's vertical scroll, and on mobile it's then a horizontal scroll, and it's just different and it's unique, and it's actually a really nice way to browse like new product. And then they've also got an all collection, which is basically, I think it's rows of 10 on desktop and 5 on mobile. But yeah, it's just a really nice way to like kind of visually curate product that's very, very different and unique. And we're constantly trying to push our clients to do more of this kind of stuff. Yeah, and I think more brands should be a bit less traditional with particularly these two types of templates. And then Tracksmith is purely content, to be perfectly honest. I just think all of their content across the site, photography, like is fantastic. And I think that really like represents the brand really well and sells the product really well.
Yeah, nice. I haven't heard of the brand before. I will definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's really strong.
Yeah, and then I think one of my personal favorites, Suit Supply. I think it combines two things I really like. So what we touched upon at the start was the AI part. So I think they are one of the first brands to utilize AI in creating content. So the guys of Analog Agency made this visual, and it's actually a combination of AI, so the background combined with photography. And they've been running campaigns for the last couple of months in this way, and this helps Suit Supply to really lower their cost of photo shoots, which are much cheaper nowadays, while the quality is it really gives a wow effect. So I like that, and as well the immersive feel of the brand. You immediately feel you're in the Suit Supply universe. Another challenge of the last couple of years is like, okay, how do I know this will actually look good on me? And I think the Suit Supply team did a good job in creating this look creator. So essentially you can pick any of their products from their catalog, combine it the way you want to define like, okay, what is the look I want to go for without needing to go to the store. And yeah, you can also change the type of people to look more like yourself to get a better feel of how it looks like on you. And then after that, you can select your sizes and add it to your cart. I haven't seen it done in a smarter way before, so this is quite a nice way of kind of guided selling, and increasing your average order value by making it easier for the customer to create their own looks.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is, you showed me this in LA, and I think it's one of the best examples I've seen. And I think brands will do this a lot more. And I think this kind of stuff and some of the new AR stuff will be like what everyone's been talking about for years around connecting offline and online.
Because technically seen, this is still quite a simple solution. So essentially, it's an image with layered PNGs based on the selection you make, but still it feels really it gives you a good representation. And then I think no label. So one of the challenges, obviously, which we see in fashion is the high amount of returns, and one of the driving factors is wrong sizing. And with no label, they have two different, let's say, size guides. So they have the size guide and the size finder, and they utilize here an app called Fastlet. But essentially, it's a way to, based on your age, your length, your weight, define your size. But the smartest thing of it is that it remembers your size. So if you go to different products, you don't need to fill it in again, but it will already tell you which size you need. So you can see it here on the right, just below the size selectors. So I think that's quite nice. Another thing with no label is also they're moving quite quickly forward with adding new innovations. So they were one of the first brands from our clients moving to the Shopify one-page checkout. And you just see, if you go, I think here on the video, will now move to the checkout. For the ones who haven't seen or tried it yet, it's just a whole different experience. So on the left side, you'll now have your personal details, delivery, and payment on one page, which makes it a much better experience. Yeah, so I would advise everyone in the webinar to check out these brands and get inspired, because they have much more pages which could inspire you. Let's see if there are any questions from the audience. Yeah. So in terms of performance optimization for e-commerce websites, what are key factors or best practices that you recommend to ensure a seamless and efficient online shopping experience for customers?
I think you're probably the best place to answer that one, Martijn.
What did you say?
I think you're the best place to answer that one.
Yeah, so if we talk about performance optimization in the technical sense of the word, I think it is an ongoing topic we hear a lot, because with every millisecond we can have the page loaded quicker. Eventually we'll have a higher conversion rate and more sales. So there are a couple of things. So one of it is simplifying the tech stack. So the trend we saw, where in the last couple of years brands would use third-party tools for features on their platform, that introduces some latency, because once a web page is loaded, you will need to communicate through the APIs with the external tool to get the right information. And with the trend of having a more simplified tech stack, for example, in the case of search, if we don't use Algolia but we use Shopify search, it will increase the performance of the platform. But there are also some smart tricks we for example introduce. So in case you're using any widgets, for example a Georgia's widget, let's say that only around 10% of your customers would use the widget, But using an external widget adds size to your website and makes it slower. So what we do is we load a small PNG image, which looks like the Georgia's widget. And only people who actually click on the image, for those will load the Georgia's tool. So also ensuring we don't load all the JavaScript, which is unnecessary. But I think it's always hard to say that there's one general way how to increase performance. It's a case by case review, and in some cases it's about reducing JavaScript. In some cases it's just that the marketing team loaded the images in too high resolution. So I hope this answers your question. Do you have something to add to that, Paul?
I was just going to say the same as you, which I think it's just discipline nowadays, like from a technical perspective and from a operational perspective. So from a technical perspective, just making sure you're testing things before you do releases, and thinking about like the third-party JavaScript before you're buying vendors, all of that kind of stuff. And then, like you say, content. And equally as well, I think it obviously doesn't apply to you guys, but I think a lot of agencies, when they start to do lots of deployments quickly and make lots of changes, often I think you start to see themes degrade quite quickly. So I think it's just for me the biggest thing is just discipline on both sides.
Yeah. Then a last question. So maybe some inspiration if we look back at 2023, which features and optimization have you seen drive the best impacts and uplifts for your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, I can start. I think usually upsells are probably one of the biggest, quickest things you can do to drive incremental additional revenue. I think it dependent on how far along you are with it, but I think things like accompanying upsells through the cart process, sometimes even post-purchase upsells, stuff like that, is a good kind of quick win. I think then beyond that, data capture is another one that's often kind of ready to be optimized, like things like making sure your checkout opt-ins are like as strong as they can be across different geographies. When you're doing things like data capture pop-ups, they're as strong as possible, like the proposition is as compelling as possible, and you're thinking about like SMS alongside email, all of that kind of stuff. I would say they're probably two like really easy quick wins for a lot of people when we start working.
Yeah, I think I have three. I think one is the performance, so really taking performance of the platform seriously, reviewing what you can optimize, and keep tracking it along a long time, because things will change. I think automation of your email flows. So with Klaviyo, probably most of you already have automations in place, and they are quite extensive, but critically review all of them, see which are performing well, which are not performing well, and actively updating them on a monthly basis. That's definitely something I would advise. And I had a third one, but I think I forgot it. So you'll keep that one from me in a next webinar. I think all in all, it's just important to keep a close eye on the platform and performance and the data, and make decisions based on the data you receive from the platform. So, Paul, thanks a lot for your time and joining and sharing the knowledge. It was fun as always. Thanks everyone. Yeah, thanks, and thanks everyone for joining.